Buffalo Bills training camp is nearly here, and while everybody wants to talk about the flashy names, the real story of this offseason might be happening in the shadows of the depth chart. We are talking roster battles that decide who actually survives the final cuts, a fullback competition that could get canceled entirely. And one veteran name who has zero connection to Buffalo right now, but honestly should. Let's break down exactly how this roster is shaping up, position by position, because the details here matter a lot more than they seem. Let's start in the backfield, because this part of the roster is refreshingly simple. James Cook returns as Buffalo's clear top playmaker, the guy defenses have to account for on every single snap. Behind him, Raheem Mostert and Ty Johnson round out the group, giving this offense a nice blend of physicality and situational versatility. Frank Gore Jr. and Ian Wheeler look like the odd men out here. And barring a major surprise in camp, that trio of Cook, Mostert, and Johnson should be locked in as the running back room heading into the season. Now here is where things get genuinely fascinating. The fullback position. Buffalo has a real live competition happening between undrafted rookie Jackson Acker out of Wisconsin and Ben Van Sumeren, a converted linebacker who has bounced around the league for a few years while carving out a niche as a special teams contributor with just a sprinkle of fullback reps mixed in. Here is the twist that should make Bills Mafia pay attention. This competition might not even matter, because head coach Joe Brady has been crystal clear that Buffalo is not going to keep a fullback on the roster just because the playbook happens to have a fullback position drawn up. Whoever wants that job actually has to earn it. So who has the edge right now? Jackson Acker brings youthful upside, but he has reportedly missed a significant chunk of valuable spring practice time, which is about the worst thing an undrafted rookie fullback can do when he is already fighting an uphill battle for a roster spot. Ben Van Sumeren, on the other hand, has actual NFL roster experience under his belt, real athletic upside, and a much clearer path to contributing on special teams, which happens to be exactly the kind of value that keeps fringe roster players employed in this league. If the Bills do decide to carry a fullback this season, Van Sumeren currently looks like the favorite. But do not be shocked if Buffalo decides neither player has done enough and simply uses that roster spot somewhere else entirely. Which brings us to the wide receiver room, and this is where the sixth and final spot gets genuinely interesting. The top 5 names practically pick themselves at this point. DJ Moore, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, rookie Skylar Bell, and Josh Palmer. But that 6th spot is not going to some flashy name you might expect. The favorite right now appears to be Trent Sherfield, and here is exactly why that makes sense. Sherfield has made this exact roster before, so there is a track record of familiarity there. He brings legitimate value as a blocker, the kind of unglamorous, dirty work skill set that does not show up on a highlight reel, but absolutely matters on Sundays. And he has 3 years of prior experience working directly under special teams coordinator Jeff Rodgers back during their time together in Arizona, which means he already understands exactly what is being asked of him as a gunner on the punt team. Now compare that to the alternatives. Mecole Hardman offers legitimate speed and intriguing punt return upside, and honestly, if Buffalo believes in him specifically as a returner, he could absolutely talk his way onto the roster. Jalen Virgil brings some special teams value of his own, but Sherfield's specific combination of blocking reliability and special teams pedigree gives him a real edge over both of those names heading into camp. But even that 6th spot is not the biggest question mark in this receiver room. Josh Palmer's roster spot itself is not exactly bulletproof. If injuries continue derailing his progress, or if he simply cannot find a defined role behind Moore, Shakir, and Coleman, do not be surprised if Buffalo decides to move on from him entirely, whether that means a trade or an outright release. And here is where things get spicy. That exact scenario could open the door for a familiar face to return, Brandon Cooks stepping back in as a specialized vertical threat. To be completely clear, nothing here is confirmed. There is no reported deal, no visit, nothing official on that front. But the mere possibility says a lot about how aggressively Buffalo has to evaluate every single spot on this offense. This roster cannot afford to keep players based on name recognition alone. Every spot has to represent an actual solution to a real problem. That same evaluation standard applies directly to the tight end room, which might be the most stacked group on the entire roster. Dalton Kincaid remains the unquestioned centerpiece of this passing attack, Dawson Knox provides veteran experience and reliable blocking, and Jackson Hawes adds another physical body to the mix. But here is the layer that should make Bills fans a little nervous, given how much this offense leans on Kincaid and given the injury history that comes with that reliance. Is there a scenario where Buffalo actually carries 4 tight ends this season? Shane Zylstra brings intriguing athletic upside along with real special teams experience from meaningful snaps with Detroit last season, and by skill set, he might be the closest thing on this roster to a Dalton Kincaid clone. Koa Ki Liato, meanwhile, offers a bigger, more traditional inline frame. Either one could provide extra depth while also functioning as a de facto lead blocker whenever Joe Brady wants to deploy heavier personnel groupings, which, interestingly enough, could completely eliminate Buffalo's need to roster a traditional fullback at all. Now let's zoom out to the biggest overarching question about this entire roster. Because Buffalo's offense looks crowded and talented until you ask the one question that actually decides championships. Which of these players can hold up when the season turns violent? Not during a comfortable September afternoon with a 3-score lead already in hand. We are talking about who survives when the pocket collapses, the weather turns brutal, and one single missed block ends another Super Bowl run before it even gets started. That is what these roster battles are truly about beneath the surface. And that brings us to a name with absolutely zero reported connection to Buffalo right now, but one that deserves serious consideration anyway: veteran offensive tackle Cam Robinson. Let's be completely transparent. There is no confirmed Bills interest, no reported visit, no known contract offer on the table. This is purely a hypothetical worth exploring. But hypothetically, Robinson could offer Buffalo something every legitimate championship contender eventually needs: a genuinely experienced tackle who has logged real, meaningful NFL snaps and would not blink if suddenly thrust into the starting lineup during a critical playoff run. Dion Dawkins and Spencer Brown remain Buffalo's unquestioned starters at tackle, and that is not up for debate. The real question is what happens the moment one of them misses time. Does Buffalo genuinely trust its current young depth to protect Josh Allen against an elite edge rusher in the middle of January? Or does General Manager Brandon Beane go out and secure a genuine veteran insurance policy before another team suffers a tackle injury and drives the price up on available options? Robinson has primarily played on the left side throughout his career, so the fit would not be perfectly seamless, and he would need to fully accept a backup role with a manageable contract and zero guarantee of ever starting. But that is exactly the argument in favor of making this move. Buffalo would not be signing Cam Robinson to replace Dion Dawkins. They would be signing him to protect the entire season from a single unlucky injury. Think about what that kind of veteran tackle depth would unlock for Joe Brady schematically. Buffalo could confidently roll out heavier personnel groupings without worrying about wearing down its starters. They could deploy an extra tackle specifically in short yardage packages. They could absorb an in-season injury without being forced to completely overhaul the offensive identity overnight. And most importantly, Josh Allen would not have to compensate for a protection breakdown by turning every single broken play into another one-man rescue mission. That pattern has repeated itself far too many times already. Allen is talented enough to paper over offensive line flaws throughout an ordinary regular season. The playoffs have a brutal way of exposing every single crack. That is exactly why Buffalo's final roster decisions cannot be based purely on upside and potential. Some roster spots demand stability, some demand pure special teams value, some demand positional versatility, and one or two spots might genuinely require bringing in a steady veteran who can step onto the field without the entire operation falling apart around him. Signing someone like Cam Robinson would never be a glamorous, headline-grabbing move. It would not single-handedly sell the Super Bowl dream to Bills Mafia. But championships are often decided by the player who quietly prevents disaster, not the player who dominates a highlight reel or a video thumbnail. Buffalo has genuine offensive weapons. It has legitimate depth competitions unfolding across the roster. It has multiple different paths available to build out Joe Brady's vision for this offense. The real question left to answer is whether this front office trusts every single layer currently protecting Josh Allen, or whether it is finally time to stop asking their franchise quarterback to cover up every remaining weakness himself. So Bills Mafia, here is the debate. Would you use Buffalo's remaining offseason resources on a steady veteran tackle like Cam Robinson, or would you rather trust the young offensive line depth and instead add another skill position weapon? Smash that like button if you are ready for training camp to finally kick off. Drop your honest roster predictions down in the comments section. And make sure you are subscribed so you never miss a single Buffalo Bills roster breakdown this offseason. Let's go Buffalo, and we will see you in the next one.